regular meeting of September 26, 2000 order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. And this we pray. Amen. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Present.
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 Present. Item number 5, these are communications from the staff. Are there any tonight? Nothing? Anything? Okay. Item number 6, these are items from the public. These are non-agenda items. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the items from the public. These are on agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the Council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the Mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the Council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the Mayor and the Council grants a longer period of time. And when you do come to the podium, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Item number 7, these are public hearing. There are none tonight. Item number 8, this is a consent calendar. 8A is approval of warrants. 8B is approval of minutes of the September 12th, 2000 special meeting. Also the September 12th, 2000 regular meeting, August 22nd, 2000 special meeting, and the August 22nd, 2000 regular meeting, and finally the August 29th, 2000 special meeting. 8C is authorize the purchase of a new police vehicle. 8D is authorized expenditure for repair of a variable speed drive at well number 6. E is adopt resolution authorizing Cleve Morris, our city manager, to execute all master agreements, program supplemental agreements, fund exchange agreements, fund transfer agreements, and any amendments thereto with the Office of Local Programs with the California Department of Transportation. F is to adopt resolution number 2000 next to number, a resolution of the Newman City Council adopting the Fair Political Practices Commission Model Conflict of Interest Code. Item G is adopt resolution number 2000 next to number, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newman approving the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program for the City of Newman. Are there any questions on any of the consent items?
Item 8A.
All right.
And I'd like to pull item 8C also.
Okay, are there any others that we wish to pull? Okay, before we discuss 8A and 8C, can we have some direction on B, D, E, F, and G, please?
Move approval of the items as accepted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. Okay, item 8A, Dave?
Just pull PG&E out of that.
Oh, okay.
There is,
Where's it at?
you saw it, voucher provision.
I don't think there is any PG&E voucher.
I don't think
There
it's
is
in
none
here.
for this.
No.
This
No
one.
PG&E one.
Mm-mm.
Strange.
Okay, can we have some
We have them once a month.
Once a
can we have some direction on 8A, please?
Motion to approve 8A. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent. 8C, Dave?
I just wanted, just quickly, Mike, there are 2 bids on this. Have you made up your mind which one that you're going to go with?
If you look at the bid process, actually Patchett's, our local vendor here,
Right.
is the lowest. It's actually a 2001. And
Automobile, it's $500
More, actually.
more.
but if you look
But-
at that with taxes included on that, which the other bid did not have that, so it does bring it into a little
Yeah,
bit
that's why I
lower.
just wanted to make sure that we were going with the local if it was close enough, okay?
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Okay, good. Plus, the local one, that's a 2001. The other one was a 2000. Real quick, like, before we approve this, as far as the rotation on the vehicles, where are we at on that right now? Rotating in and out of the vehicles?
Right now, we're looking at taking off a 95 unit, this is as stated in the report, so it's going to become our detective's car. It's got about almost 90,000 miles on it. So it's rotating out of patrol, which would have the harder usage on it, into the detective position, which would not see pursuits and harder wear and tear on that vehicle, so it should last a little bit longer for us.
Right, but we'll have the 2001, and then will we be caught up on our rotation finally?
We're
Every
staying
year.
on schedule with about
Okay.
a car a year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
You're not painting it neon blue, are you?
Kind of looking at a nice subtle tan, maybe.
Sounds good.
Okay, if there are no other questions, can we have some direction on this item, please?
I so move that we authorize the purchase of a new police car.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absence. Item 9, this is regular business. Tonight we're going to have a presentation by Fieldman, Rollap, and Associates on an overview of the capital facilities fees and their update process, but we have Charlie Long here tonight to give us an update. Charlie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My associate, Rosalind Chen, is handing out some visual aids so that hopefully you can remember or at least follow along with what I have to say. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I am Charles Long of Fieldman Rollap Associates, your consultant for updating your capital facilities fee program. And what we'd like to do tonight is to just give you a heads up of what's going to happen in the next 90 days on this study. This is not going to be a discussion of substantive issues. It's really going to be just a discussion of that'll give you some warning for when things are going to happen along the way, and a little bit of our thinking about how you can position the city to hopefully deal with some, I think, significant policy issues that'll be coming up over the next 90 days. I think most of you know what a capital facilities fee is, but on the first page of the handout, or actually the second page of the handout, there's simply a reminder that these are fees that are collected from development that are based upon needed capital facilities. They're not associated with paying operations cost, and they need to be shown to actually provide proportionate benefit to the development that's being charged. In other words, there needs to be legally a nexus. These are fees that were collected in the past by cities under some general authority to essentially protect the health and welfare of the community. But in 1989, the legislature adopted a statute called AB 1600. And so you'll see a lot of cities having adopted fees after 89 that met the criteria of the government code section that authorized cities to enact these fees. Most cities have these fees. Newman's had them since, I believe, 92. And they pay for parks and roads and new police buildings and fire stations, all associated with growth in the community. The starting point for this study, shown on page 3, are the population and employment projections associated with growth in the community. You currently have a population of about 6,400 with an employment of about 2,000, which gives us, for purposes of calculating these fees, a service population of about 7,400 people. Now, we are not collecting fees to pay for facilities that benefit those 7,400, that 7,400 service population. It's everybody to come in the future that we're sizing the facilities for and collecting the fees to pay for the facilities for. you see two projections of population increases that we're currently working with that we need to actually go through and reconcile. One is a projection that's currently being used by the traffic study that you've commissioned, that's just about ready for release. The second is the general plan that you adopted, I believe, in '92, that shows a build-out population of about 28,000 people. They're very close, and what we need to do is to go through a process that actually reconciles the two projections so that you have one set of projections and you're charging people on the same basis. What I'd like to do now is just briefly turn over the presentation to my associate, Rosalind Chen, who is going to just walk you through some of the categories and some of the issues that we're dealing with and putting together a set of recommendations for you. Rosalind?
Thank you, Charlie. Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and also City staff. My name is Rosalind Chen with Gilman Roll-Up and Associates, and I'm going to start my presentation on page 4. Right here you will see an outline of the facilities that will be in the study. We have police protection, fire protection, transportation, parks and recreational facilities like community buildings, water, storm drainage. I'd like to add one more to this list, which is sewers. Okay, and before I move on, I must say that the numbers in the study right now are preliminary in nature. We're going to work with the city staff as well as other interested parties to refine it as time goes on. So everything we see here right now is subject to change in the future. Okay, so let's move on to page number 5. Police protection. I worked with Police Chief Brady in coming up with some of these assumptions, and I reviewed my assumptions with him this afternoon, and these are the facilities that are projected to be needed by the build out of the city. Okay, and these are a facility that's not including existing facilities. That's a facility that you will need in the future. Okay, so let's move down the list. We're estimating the city of Newman will need 64,000 square feet of police station, and that's going to cost an estimated $7.7 million. And as Chief Brady pointed out, that the current animal holding pen is not sufficient. They only have 3 pens, and they would like that to see that increase to 30 pens, and that will cost an estimated of $148,000. And currently, the police station is looking at improving its technological infrastructure, such as wiring and maybe fiber optic connections to the internet and things of that sort. And the estimated cost for that is $68,000. And with the increase in population, we're looking at hiring new policemen and thus needing new patrol vehicles. So we're looking at the need of 25 additional patrol vehicles, and that's going to cost an estimated $1 million. And then we also look at 42 other related vehicles at 1.26, and then 68 sets of officer equipment at $170,000. So the estimated total for the police department is going to be $10.4 million. And the estimated fee is at $353 per person served. Okay, and we move on to fire protection. And this is, I've worked with Fire Chief Souza to come up with these numbers. And I'm going to go down pretty quickly here. We have 16,000 square feet of fire station need at $2.8 million, and the total cost for the fire protection is going to come up to around $6.9 million. And it's going to serve both employees and residents. And the estimated capital facilities fee for this category is $234 per person served. And we move on to transportation. The transportation portion of this study is based on the Delling study update that's released June 1st of this year. And the study provides a list of improvement that is needed. And if you turn to the very back to attachment A, it outlines all the improvements that it's planning to do. And the Delling and Associate study estimates all the improvements are going to cost about $29.7 million. And that's going to average out to $351 per daily trip. And next we move on to parks. And the need for parks is based on the Quimby Act of 5 acres per 1,000 residents. And there is a need for an additional 126 acres of park. To derive at our cost of $15.1 million, I've assumed $600,000 of land acquisition cost as well as $600,000 of development cost. So it's going to be $120,000 per acre of parks. And 126 acres of parks is going to cost approximately $18 million. And that comes down to $713 per resident. Please note that employees will not be paying this fee. This is going to be a residential fee only. And if you turn to page 9, we will have categories to come. We have storm drainage, water, and sewer. And the reason why these are not in the study is because engineering studies must be completed before we can go any further with those 3 categories. And we're currently waiting for the city and its consultants to complete the study. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back to my associate, Charlie.
As you can see, we've done a lot of preliminary arithmetic, and I just want to emphasize for you, this is very preliminary. And it's based upon standards that we need to bring forward to you so that you can take a look at them and decide whether or not they are, in fact, the standards that you want to live with in the community. Many of these standards are things that are already contained in your general plan. Some of these standards are things that need to be looked at both in a public decision-making process and ultimately by the City Council. There's a lot of work necessary to bring that process to a conclusion. We expect that that work will need to take place over the next 90 days. And what I'm going to do is outline for you a little bit of the schedule. But just to highlight for you on page 10 some of the issues that we need to be dealing with over the next 90 days, let me just summarize those for you. The first is that you currently have in process a substantial amount of growth that's already received approval of a vested tentative map. I think it's in the city's interest to move through the study so that more units are not in the position of having vested tentative map, but also to position yourself so that when you finally see the study results, that you're able to adopt the results of that study by resolution. The reason that that's important is it avoids all the steps that you need to take to adopt the study by ordinance. And so in the next 30 days or so, working with your city attorney, we're going to bring to you an ordinance that essentially adopts the current fees again, but then allows you to adopt new fees by resolution. That'll change the implementation date of adopting new fees from 115 days from the time that you actually introduce the ordinance to 60 days from the time that you adopt the resolution. So you'll see that on your agenda probably in the next 30 to 45 days. This change in the method of adopting the capital facilities fees. I mentioned the issue of the vested tentative maps, and essentially California law will prevent you from going back and changing the rules on vested tentative maps. So lots that you have invested tentative maps will essentially be under the old fee regime. That'll probably mean that they'll be subject to inflation, but they will not be subject to newly adopted fees. Now, we need to be dealing with that issue in a way that is reflective of the interest of the city as well as the development community. Some of those developers want development agreements. And so you'll see as we bring forward this capital facilities fee study that we'll also be working with your staff and producing suggested approaches to development agreements that do reflect the interest of both parties around this issue of collecting fees as well as protecting the rights of the developer in terms of not being subject to the new fee regime. One of the issues that also is going to be in play is the flexibility that you have in spending these fees, earmarking them by category, the ability to use fees in different categories for different purposes, and the issue of annual reporting. And so we will be working with your staff in terms of producing recommendations for you on these flexibility of expenditure issues as well as the issue of compliance with the state law in terms of annually reporting the use of your fee. Finally, part of our experience with these capital facilities fees is that they need to be kept up to date with inflation. And you need to have procedures by which those fees are automatically updated with inflation so that you don't have to have all the public hearing notices and all the difficult policy issues having to do with just keeping yourself even with the normal escalation in capital cost. And so we'll be crafting recommendations for you where you will be able to enact the automatic escalation of fees with normal inflation for this area. Finally, in terms of implementation, we find that one of the places where a fee program falls down is just in terms of the people that have to implement it actually understanding what's going on. So one of the things that we'll be doing is working with your staff so that they understand the fee categories, understand the who is subject to the new fees, which developments will be availing themselves of their rights under the vested tentative maps. We'll provide summaries and explanations of the fees for the public. And one of the things that we've committed to in our scope of work is to provide a comprehensive summary of these fees so that there is one place that a developer can go or a member of the public can go and find out all of the development fees that you're charging for every kind of development that you would actually be seeing in the community. So this is a pretty comprehensive program. It involves not only bringing forward to you policy recommendations, but putting in place the necessary mechanisms to make sure that the recommendations that you ultimately adopt are implemented in the spirit with which you adopt them. Before I go to the schedule, do you have any questions at this point about what's going on here?
Are there any questions? No. Go ahead.
Okay. The schedule is the last 2 pages. You see that we are essentially at September 26th, which is this discussion and essentially warning of events to come of what's going to happen over the 90 days. We're hoping to produce a first draft of the report that will be something to shoot at, so to speak, sometime in the next 3 weeks. This ordinance that I mentioned previously that would allow you to adopt a new fee recommendation would come to you October 24th with the first reading. Simultaneously with that, we'll be reviewing the draft report with your staff Second reading of the ordinance would take place November 7th. Beginning about around mid-November, we'd start formal meetings with the Building Industry Association and other interested parties. We need to have some meeting schedules to do that. We would also have a meeting with the general public November 23rd. I'm not sure how those things work with Thanksgiving. I'm not sure whether we may need to adjust those to actually work around the holiday schedule. Hopefully, we would be receiving, we'd have sort of a whole set of comments on the report by the end of November. Beginning of December, we'd prepare a staff report, notice of public hearing mid-December, have it published, and then essentially produce the final draft of the report mid-December with a presentation to occur the first meeting in 2001. It's a pretty ambitious schedule. It's about as fast as we could do it. My sense of this is these things always take longer than you expect them to take. I completed a study in Modesto in 1999. It took me 2.5 years to get through the process that we're describing here in about 90 days. So I want to just emphasize for you that this is ambitious, and this is about as fast as we could reasonably expect to do it, and it's probably faster than we could reasonably expect to do it, but let's see if we can move through this and deal with the issues. I want to emphasize that this is a process where there are a lot of people that have a stake in the outcome. Clearly, the residents that live here have a huge stake in making sure that people that come to the community are paying their fair share of the cost of the facilities necessary to serve growth. That is a clear, compelling interest, and to some extent, the City Council and the members of the public that are already here need to be forewarned about the need to represent that interest. In addition, you have people who want and the city both want this to be a high-quality place to live, and that's going to take a reasonable amount of fees to fund the facilities necessary. With those comments, that concludes our presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Long?
I wondered, what is the build-out date projected? Is it 20 years, 30 years? These numbers are based on how long a period of time?
Depends upon how fast the community grows. And
So that could vary.
in many ways, the build-out date is indeterminate. However, the area of the general plan is a known area and it has a carrying capacity of around 25 to 28,000 people.
Right. Plus the other thing here is it has on page 3, it has what the rate of growth is per the general plan over 20 years. And it has what the
20
rate of
30.
growth is over 30.
Yeah.
for the
But
general
these
fund.
numbers are, take into account all of those variables.
Well, the numbers take into account the area that's available for development. By the way, there is an error there, and I think we've flipped the 8.4 and the 5.5. It should be reversed. The higher rate should be associated with the shorter time period, and the lower rate should be associated with the longer time period. My apologies for that. But you can see that, and both of those rates, frankly, are faster than you've been growing. And if we actually projected, or we actually calculated the rate that it would take you to get to those numbers based upon the rate that you've experienced over the past 10 years, it would be on the order of 40 to 50 years for you to get there. And we can actually calculate that number if you're interested in it. I'm sure you are. I think the important thing is that we are designing facilities to serve the build-out population. This is always something of an issue in terms of these studies. Do you actually want to take some interim spot, like 20 years out, guess at how fast you're going to grow, and then just design facilities for that 20-year point? Well, the difficulty is that if you miss on the rate of growth, you may collect money too slowly, or you may collect money too rapidly, and then you have growth after that 20-year point that is either going to be paying too much or too little for the remainder of the community's facilities. So what we typically like to do is to take your general plan and say, this is the area that the community has decided that is their general plan area in which they are actually going to grow, and then let's design facilities for that, and then let's spread the cost of those facilities over the entire growth. That way everybody is paying a proportionate share. I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop talking about this, or over talking about this issue, and that is our experience in dealing with this issue is that even taking that large amount of growth, which may be a pretty big number and may require an awful long time to get to, you do not put the growth that is being charged at a disadvantage, simply because the facilities that are designed to serve the build-out, divided by the total build-out, will result in a unit cost that is fairly manageable. If you take some interim point, that unit cost, and you guess right on the rate of growth, that unit cost is probably not going to be that much different. Does that respond to your question?
Yeah,
Councilmember?
I know one of the things you talked about was the need to build in some verbiage for escalation, and I just wasn't sure how that fit in with the for instance, with the $353 per person for police protection.
Well, those numbers are based upon current dollars. In theory, next year, if inflation in construction cost is 3%, it's going to cost 3% more to build that. So we'd want to keep the fees current with the escalation in costs.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I just had one. Some of these numbers, I know they're preliminary, but these numbers could be really off. Because I'm saying, how do we know what 64,800 square feet of police station is going to cost us? I mean, who calculated it?
We worked with your police department, and they are recommending, in effect, what this final report will be is a set of recommendations for you for what your overall capital program is.
They're basically, if I can add, they're basically basing it on a formula. We have X amount of police officers now, which require X amount of square footage. Based on this build out here, it would require X amount based on that formula, and then basically taking whatever the square footage cost is and building that all in. And like Charlie was saying, inflation would be factored
I
in.
understand that, but the thing is, like, the technology needed $68,000. That's just a number to me. It could be a lot higher than that. It could be $268,000.
Well, and every single one of these data points is backed up by lots of documentation. So you'll be able to actually reach in, look at the documentation, and to the extent that you decide that you want to change it, you'll have the ability to do that.
I just, I don't feel comfortable with these numbers at this point. I don't think they're good numbers.
Well, they're based on today's costs, and of course that we don't have a crystal ball to read into the future, but these numbers are all based on what it would cost today. Is that correct? If we were to have to build...
Well, I'm not sure that the concern, if I'm hearing you correctly, your concern may not necessarily about the unit cost. It may be about what's being built.
Well, absolutely, but I mean, all these numbers are taken into consideration for your $353 per person.
Right.
And if those are not good numbers, then that's not a good number.
Right. I mean, the outcome is based upon a set of assumptions.
Right.
And you're absolutely correct. And I think maybe one of the things we need to talk to Cleve about is to the extent that you as council members want to have some higher level of involvement in looking at all the assumptions, Cleve and I can work out a process by which that can happen.
Right. Well, the other thing that's going to happen as well is, and it's pointed out here at the very beginning of it, is, you know, with regards to, you know, we're going to meet with the building industry in the future. I guess we're looking at November, but also the thing that we have to take into consideration, we have this AB 1600 requirement. We have all these other things that are going to make sure that, you know, the fees are going to be properly assessed. I mean, per law.
Yeah. Bob, if I could, just so you understand, as you mentioned, these are preliminary. These were given to you more to help you understand the process, not to look at these numbers. We realize that there's, I agree, there's some problems with these numbers
I
that
know,
we
but
still
we're
need
going
to
to
work
frighten a
out.
lot of people out there when we start tossing out numbers that are not good numbers.
Yeah, but again, this was to look at the process, not at the numbers. And yeah, maybe we could have left the numbers out, but again, it's to the process. We realize they're not there, and it wasn't at all to give you something to say, wow, is this what we're going to be doing? Because we know that we need to make some adjustments to these. But it's to get the council on board to say, where are we going? And this is a process we'll follow through. There will be a lot more input that will be going into this. And this is the kickoff meeting to get it started. So
I'll also say that
we will provide the information to help you feel comfortable with these numbers. We have to do that.
I'll also say that we did have a meeting with representatives of BIA before the council meeting, knowing that they will have a high degree of interest in these numbers. They're also going to be, I know, reviewing a lot of the numbers, a lot of the capital program in the public forums that we've set up, we will be setting up. And so you as council members also need to have an opportunity to get fully informed about what's going on in terms of each of these assumptions. We did put the numbers in for a reason, to show you that there will be numbers that come out of this study. These may not necessarily be the ones, but there will be a lot of numbers that come out of this study, all of which will have an impact on the conclusions. So get ready.
We're ready.
Are there any other questions? And it appears to me that the main area that is going to be the controversial one is this transportation study.
Absolutely.
Our figure versus their figure, because it's a pretty significant difference.
Well, and there's going to be a lot of issues in that in terms of right-of-way standards and improvement standards and lanes, and we just need to work through those so that everybody feels like their needs are being met.
Okay. All right, if you, are there any questions from any interested parties? Mr. Kaznowski, would you like to come up and ask any questions? Charlie? Actually, if you could sit right there, if he may have questions for you that way.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, City staff. My name is Ed Kaznowski. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Building Industry Association, Central California, and we represent the single-family non-union housing in Merced and Stanislaus counties. As your consultant told you, we did have a little bit of a meeting prior to the council tonight, and I'll tell you what, after looking at the aggressiveness of your time schedule, I wish you would have showed this to me earlier. I could have saved myself a good meal because I'd have lost my appetite. It's really aggressive. There are about 6 points that I'd like to make, and they are, first of all, we do share your sense of urgency. There's nothing more disquieting to the development community than not knowing what their hard costs are going to be. So we are fully in line and in step with you as getting this done as quickly as possible. And I wanted to assure you that we're not here to be a hindrance, but we're here to represent our members and make sure that what is the law is the law. So please don't take our involvement in any other matter than we're looking out for the interests of our members and doing it as expediently as possible. The second thing I want to assure you is that we do wish to pay our fair share. Our Building Industry Association is one of the few in the state that is not all about bottom line, what's the lowest figure that we can get. We're about paying our fair share, making sure the community is a good place to live and that you have the appropriate infrastructure to service the people that live here. So that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. We do have some requests, though. I've been talking to your city manager for about 3 months about capital facility fees, and this is the first time I've seen any kind of hard documentation about where you're going. I see that you're going to have a first draft of the CFF report on October 13th. We would formally request that prior to that coming to the City Council, that we have a chance to meet with the staff and take a look at it so we can give you our input. I don't think it serves anybody's interest to be hassling over the cost of a fire engine or the cost of a police uniform or anything of that nature, which is kind of the minutia that we get into. So if we could request a meeting at your convenience prior to you getting the first draft that we could have some input in, I think that would be beneficial to speeding up the process. The second thing that we would request is you have about 4 or 5 different areas here that you've already costed out. We would request the level of service, first of all, not on the per unit person, per unit cost per person, but a level of service, like how many square feet per officer are you thinking about? How many square feet per firefighter for your new fire engine? You have 11 fire trucks here for, I don't know how much money it is, but we'd like to see the breakout of those type of things. In short, we'd like to see how you got to where you're at so that we can at least convince ourselves that, yeah, this is in line because we've done this in about 10 other cities, or we have a problem with the cost here, let's talk about it. And I think that's the kind of dialogue that we need to have to make this a buy-in for the community and for the industry. And not that we're trying to say, well, you don't need 11 fire trucks, we just want to make sure that the cost is what the cost is, kind of what this council member was asking, I believe. As far as the automatic escalation of your existing capital facility fees and for your new capital facility fees, that's something that this industry is used to. I think that's something that is very beneficial because, number one, you don't get behind the 8 ball and lose where you need to lose, where you don't need to lose income. And it's something that's the cost of doing business. And if you hook it on to a reputable cost index, the engineering news record is one that is being used in some areas. It's just a slam dunk. It's statistical. People do it. We understand it. And it stops you from losing an automatic inflation that maybe you have in the past. So I think that's a good idea. The other thing that we'd like to explore with you and formally request is that we have some discussion on when we pay these fees. We are not against higher fees, but there are ways that you can mitigate some of the increase in the fees by when you pay them. You can, by act of council, do an urgency clause, which is the way that you've done it before, which requires the developer to pay a time of permit pull when he pulls a building permit. Our argument is, well, you don't generate school kids, you don't generate police need, you don't generate fire protection until someone actually lives in the house, so we would kind of like to see it at time of occupancy. I think there's a way that we can get there, and what that does, it saves us the cost of financing the fees for about 3 months if the building industry is in a good shape. If it's in bad shape, then, well, you know, you'd have to limit the amount of time that you could delay those fees. So, just in conclusion, I would say we formally request the backup information on the presentation you have here. It's about 2.5 weeks until you're going to get a full report, although preliminary report, on these areas of water and storm drainage, park and recreation. If you have any preliminary data on that and where you're going on formulating those fees, we'd also request that. And we would avail ourselves, make ourselves available to you so as not to hold you up in the adoption of your fees. But we do want to take a look at how this is being done. Is there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Tasnowski? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can I take that as a yes to my requests that I've made at the podium?
Well, I'm actually going to bring it back to the council to discuss it right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we would then like to retain our ability to come back to the podium.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, are there any further questions for Mr. Long or on Mr. Long on any of these items that we discussed? Okay, so I want to thank you both for coming tonight. Secondly, there's a request from the Building Industry Association regarding possibly meeting on this issue before the October 13th first draft. Is there any...
Mr. Mayor, if I just might make one comment on that issue.
Okay.
Our hope was that by preparing a first draft report, that we would have a working document that would not necessarily be considered by the council in a formal meeting, but would essentially be the vehicle by which we could communicate with BIA, with the general public, with the city staff, basically what the documentation is. So that's clearly within the, what our intention is, that we prepared in one place all the documentation so that that first draft report is essentially the vehicle for communicating that.
I think probably
that is
with-
basically a staff level draft at that point rather
guess
than
what
a
I-
public document is what is intended.
Right. I guess what I assume would probably be the interest on this meeting is because at the October 24th meeting, we have a first read on the ordinance.
But that's to change the fee structure. That would be adopting the existing fees, no new fees at that point.
Okay.
That's just, as we talked about, changing it so we adopt them by resolution rather than ordinance. So that won't change anything of these, that won't be have any effect on the new CFF that we'll be adopting. So the intention is that October 13th meeting, by all means, that's not intended for a
Right.
draft that would come back to council at that point. It's a draft that would be first produced by the company, that would be reviewed by staff. We'll go over it with several interested parties, including the BIA, before we come back with a draft to the city council.
So on the November 1st meeting, though, where we review the draft report and make changes, is that making changes to the October 13th report, the draft?
That is the point, help me out if I'm wrong, Charlie, but that is the point where the council will see that.
Okay.
No, you don't even
Is it
see it
just-
yet at that point.
Actually, the November council's not scheduled to see the report under the current schedule
Until December, are they?
Yeah, we're not going to see
until,
it till November, or no, wait a minute.
Well, they would see it
December
on
4th.
November 23rd, probably.
November 23rd.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
at the town hall meeting, that would be,
That would be a formal review. Obviously, the October 13th draft, while it is basically an internal document, assuming that the staff says, yeah, that's everything that we think we told you. Shortly after that October 13th draft, that would be then the communication vehicle by which we could sit down with BIA, sit down with other interested members of the public in informal sessions, and just
And that's after
respond
when
to
again, Charlie?
questions.
That's after when again?
That's after October 13th.
Okay. So
Now,
this
the
November 20th date down at the bottom, though, is that kind of, are we going to move that up a little bit?
I think so. When I saw that November 20th, I said, well, we're actually going to have documentation shortly after October 13th.
Okay.
We ought to start. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of working through issues. So we're going to start that as quickly as we
So
can.
basically, the meeting that you all are going to have with the interested parties on this will occur after October 13th. That way you have a working document to work with to actually pick apart if it needs to be picked apart, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll have everything modeled so that if we change pieces of it.
Right. So just the only
automatically-
date that we could maybe reconsider on this is the November 20th. Obviously, we're not going to wait 5 weeks to meet with the interested parties.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Are there any Well, I mean, might as well get this, because I certainly don't want to, I don't want to get to December and then we're coming back here and figuring out, we might as well just discuss this part of as far as when we're going to meet. That way we don't come back in December and, middle of December and say, well, we didn't meet with this person or that person. We might as well just make sure we get this scheduled in working order. That's what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Ed Tesnowski again. Thank you for your indulgence, allowing me to come back. We understand what staff is doing as far as pushing the ordinances through to save time on the adoption of the renewed fees, the new fees. We do not have an objection to that. We understand why you're doing it. We understand the urgency, so we don't want to get in the way of that. Our problem is a technical one in the fact that we have to get our own experts to review this. And while we respect Mr. Long and his abilities, we do like to take a look at what he does. We've had 2.5 years of experience with him in Modesto, and because of that fact, we know we need to be on our toes because he is a smooth operator in your favor. So we can't let a couple weeks go by even because, it takes us a while after the 5th reading we finally figure out what he's trying to do. And so we have to read things quite a few more times. So that's why we're requesting that we get information as soon as possible.
We will get it to you as soon as we can. All we're saying is that I'm not going to allow the information to be released to you until I'm comfortable with it also. I've got to do that. And you'll notice that on October or November 1st is when we will meet, or scheduled to meet with them to thoroughly go through the draft and make sure to see all the changes that staff disagrees with. Once we're comfortable with it, then, because we don't want to give something out to you that's got erroneous information in it either.
Well,
and because there's got to be a starting point. We want to get it as far as we can. You'll receive all the backup data to that, and then we can move forward from there.
And I understand that, and that is very valid. From our point of view, though, I would ask you to just stand in my shoes for a minute. Strategically, we lose an opportunity to voice opposition to something. If for some reason this thing comes out and it twirls our head around 360 degrees and we think it's tremendously wrong, we don't want to wait until you're at the second resolution of adoption, reading of a resolution for adoption before we register our problems with it. And so that's kind of why we have a problem with not seeing something and going forward with an ordinance regarding adoption.
But we're not adopting these fees.
Well, that's the
We're
fees.
adopting a process.
Well,
We're adopting the existing fees, and unless you have a problem with the existing fees,
We've always had a problem with the existing fees. That's why we
that they're
want to
too
be-
low. That's why you want
I
us to
know,
bring them
yeah,
back,
it's a
right?
terrible thing, but
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I think as far as the BIA has a legitimate reason for wanting to have the draft as soon as the staff, the city staff and the consultants are assured that it's a good draft. So when we're done with that, we give it to the BIA. What we do with our ordinance to get it into an enabling situation for a resolution rather than having the adopt an ordinance has nothing to do with the BIA. We don't have to consult with them on that. What happens is, my experience, and we've worked with Ed, in a number of cities, is that if they don't have enough time, or if their experts aren't able to get through the documents and to their satisfaction, if the fact that we have a meeting scheduled, or we think we're going to schedule one on November 23rd, as you say, this is a ambitious schedule. It would be probably put off for a couple of weeks until they are, and that's, I don't think we have to argue over. I mean, it's like the Israelis and the Arabs, We've always worked with them in the past, and if they need more time and to review it, we usually give it. And I don't think, Ed, that we're going to try to ram through something, because that's not to our interest, because we come with a whole room full of contractors and their employees ranting about the fees, and it's going to ruin the economy, and it's better to work these things out ahead of time.
Okay, well, I thank you very much. I just wanted to get on the record our concerns, and you now know them, and I'll stop right there.
And I think what the council will do, and I think we've always been good at doing this, is that we're going to allow everybody the opportunity to state their case. We're not going to try to cram something through to where somebody isn't satisfied with what's being presented. and we're going to give everybody every opportunity to state their case on their issue. So, okay, we've got a couple other things. Can we, and we're not going to do it at this time, but this is something for the staff to bring back is, obviously we're going to include those levels of services as Councilmember Martina had alluded to begin with the facilities. And then the, something maybe we may bring back as something separately, or maybe included as this, is as far as when the fees are paid, as far as the time of
I've been
permit
in
or time
touch
of
with
occupancy.
Mr. Tosnowski, and we've discussed this, and I told him that I felt that this was the appropriate time to discuss that as part of this process, because that's when we'll be discussing the fees, and that is our intention, that we'll look at that.
Okay.
And as we adopt these, that will be defined when the fees are paid.
Okay. And that goes to the whole issue of with the deferral of fees and all that? Okay. So we'll get that included in all this stuff. Okay, if there are no other questions, this was a discussion item for a presentation. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you for coming tonight, and we look forward to working with you in the future on this. Okay, thank you. Item B, this authorized city manager to execute agreement with Garcia Davis Ringler Engineering for city engineering services. Cleve?
As the council is aware, we terminated our contract with Precision Inspection at your meeting on September 12th. At that time, staff took a couple of options and looked at what we could do in bringing in new engineering services. We reviewed our previous proposals, which were received in 1998, and the recommendations that came out of those. Not to say that they were less or second best or anything, but Garcia Davis Ringler was our second choice at that time. And we went back and reviewed those proposals. I looked at them again, talked to our Public Works Director as well as our former city engineer, who also assisted us with that, with the interviews when we received those RFPs. And it is my recommendation, after looking at that and looking at our options, that we obtain the services of Garcia Davis Ringler for city engineering services. If you've had a chance to look at the proposal which we gave you, they've got a lot of experience in this area. I have experience working with them at my former position in Lathrop. Our Public Works Director has experience working with them. They have done some work here in the city of Newman. They are currently city engineers for Riverbank and Livingston. Is that correct, Gary? And they have been doing that for several years. They've got good experience in this area. Gary Davis is here from that firm. I've worked a little bit with Gary in Lathrop. I know him, and I'm confident that they can provide the services that we need and pick up rather quickly and proceed with the projects which we've got going right now. So it's my recommendation that we proceed with the contract with Garcia Davis Ringler. I do have a new contract other than the one that was included in your packet here tonight. The only change is at the beginning of that agreement, it states this agreement is entered, wait a minute, let me find the right place. Under scope of services, it refers to a proposal, and yours is dated as of the previous proposal dated 1998. I did ask them to submit a new proposal to see if there were any changes to the previous one, and so I put that new date in there of September 20th. That's the only basic change in this agreement, but I wanted to refer to the new one. Under the new proposal, the only change is under the current charge rates under the different positions, and the only change there is the addition of a senior planning manager. The other rates are the same as what the proposal was in 1998. With that, Gary Davis is here to answer any questions you may have of him, if you would like.
Are there any questions for Cleve or Mr. Davis?
Well, I just wanted to comment, and my question has been answered by Cleve. You certainly have an extensive background I have every confidence that this is a good choice for our city. I just had a concern with all the projects we've got in the works that we're going to be able to stay on schedule with those projects, and it sounds as though I've got some assurance that we will be able to.
I have met with Gary Davis, and I actually took a couple of set of plans over to him and dropped them on his desk and showed him that and reviewed a lot of the projects that we have in the works to let him know what we're up against, and we're comfortable, and he's assured me that we can move forward with these projects.
Thank you.
The only question I have, just or something I'd like to see in the agreement, is we are paying so much per hour depending on who's doing the work and all of this. But on special projects, like our streetscape is one, of course they're picking up in the middle, it's kind of hard to do that, but to any new projects like that, to quote us a figure not to exceed, so that we don't run into something that, totally unexpected is, our engineering charges.
I want to say that is in here somewhere, and I'm trying to remember.
I read
under special projects.
Or
At the
mutual
city's
agreement.
option, we can use the normal billing rates, or we can ask them to submit a proposal for that.
Yeah, just so that, we have an idea where we're going.
Sure. And that will happen. We can look at that if you'd like to look at revising some language in there, but I think that's allowed for, and that any project like the streetscape, et cetera, that we would look at
Because some of these
bidding
other
that
ones have
out.
gotten a little carried away, and if we could just have something written into it for the special projects. That was all I had.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Sheila, did you have some?
No.
Anything? Okay. Can we have some direction on this item, please?
I move that we authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with Garcia Davis Ringler for city engineering services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absent. Thank you. Item 9C, this is discussion of painting of downtown buildings. Cleve?
Just quickly, this issue came up. Council asked us to bring back a report on this. I asked our planning director, Bob Borchert, to put together a memorandum on this. I don't know that how much detail you want either of us to go into on this. Our recommendation is that this is a very touchy and complicated issue, and our recommendation is that we review this at what you have proposed as a Saturday workshop in the future to see what the council's desire is in this area. As I mentioned, and I think Bob has outlined it very well, what the issues are and what we need to be aware of in reviewing this particular item. So if the council wants to discuss this further right now, we can, but our recommendation is that we review this and take some direction at a future meeting.
I would
Makes
concur.
sense. Yes.
Okay. So the concurrence is that we will send it back to Planning Commission, architectural review, and have...
Yeah, actually, before it gets to them, I think, well, what do you think, Bob? Do we go to the Saturday session? I mean, we've got, later on your agenda, we have a meeting proposed in mid-October, which it's my intention that this would go to that meeting for some general discussion. That will also have the Planning Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission at those meetings because of the topics we have proposed. So they will basically get to review it. The full process, however, will probably, especially if there are code changes, will be required to go back through the Planning Commission and Architectural Review and then on up to us. So I think the first meeting which will be discussed would be at that Saturday meeting if that's the desire of the council.
Is that fine?
Makes sense.
Okay. All right, item D, this is a further review of cleanup of city property at 1345 N Street. Ernie?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. As you'll recall, at the last council meeting, The council's desire was to wipe that property clean over at 1345 N Street. You wanted a cost estimate for complete removal of the 4 buildings that are presently there. I met with a local contractor to just look over the buildings and see just how much work was going to be involved. I have a estimated cost for demolition work of approximately $50,000. This will include the removal of all the buildings, the concrete floors, and the asphalt concrete areas. It does not include grading of property or bringing in base rock needed for use as property for a future parking lot. And I was also directed to contact Ace Hardware and talk to them about their storage problems that they were going to be encountering once these buildings were removed. I spoke with the store manager, and he said that he had talked with the owners and that they were looking to elsewhere for storage facilities. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Ernie?
Ernie, do you have a approximate idea what the grading and the rock? I mean, there's no point in taking the buildings down if we can't use it for parking. I mean, there is a point to taking it down, but still, we should be able to use it for parking. So, do you have any ballpark figures or anything?
If we wanted to come back and grade that area and bring in base rock and kind of do what we did here by the parking lot here at the vet's place, I'm thinking anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000. If you needed to, as you'll recall, the parking lot that was installed over there by Foster's on Main Street was installed at a cost of $60,000. So,
But that's the asphalt and everything.
right,
Yeah.
that had a lot of concrete, that had street lights, lighting, it had landscape sprinkler systems, and so it all depends on just how elaborate we want to get with it.
I had kind of thought that we maybe just take down the buildings and leave the concrete floors and the asphalt area that's out there, but after I looked at them closer, the concrete is at different levels, so it wouldn't work out. So we're talking roughly maybe $65,000. Do we hit that?
It would have to, well, yeah,
I
we
mean,
have it
RDA
in RDA funds,
Yeah.
yeah, if that's the direction that.
How soon, and then how long of a bid would we go?
Pardon?
How long would we go on a bid?
Well, we'd have to, in order to go out to bid, we'd have to have our new engineer come up with some bid specs and making sure that everybody would be bidding the same. Otherwise, you'd get somebody giving you a bid and then coming back and saying, gee, I thought you just wanted the buildings knocked down and not hauled away, and you could run into a lot of problems. So, or I don't know. I'd have to discuss this with our city engineer, but perhaps approaching it from a time and material standpoint and saying that I believe most demolition companies like to go at it at a bid price, because some of them have a huge equipment that can go in there and just demolish that in no time at all and just rip it off and haul it off. So
Could you, at our next meeting in a couple of weeks, can you get rolling on this stuff here? Maybe get us a staff report in our inbox, and could we come back in 2 weeks to authorize bids to demolish these buildings?
I'll do my best. I'll give it my best effort, but without having talked with Gary Davis and not knowing what his work schedule is, I'd like to work closely with him on this.
Can you give him a call tomorrow?
Pardon?
Can you give him a call tomorrow?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I can do that. I can, and then find out, and perhaps he's got, maybe they've done this kind of work before, and all they have to do is modify it to meet our needs.
Right. And then best case scenario, maybe we could bring something back to authorize bids in 2 weeks. Best case scenario, worst case scenario in 4 weeks.
And we would want to include the grading and
Of course.
and
I mean, if we're going to
base
do it, we
rock.
might as well do it right.
maybe we can get one contractor to do it all and
Right.
get a better,
Okay.
Go on, do that.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Ernie.
thing.
Okay, item E is scheduling of Saturday workshop. Cleve?
You have our basic report here. We're proposing 2 dates that would work, October 21st and October 28th. The reason I've kind of pushed it back, there's some research and some information that we want to provide, especially on the park issue, but also some more stuff that we need to do on the downtown issue and the development there. So that's why we're proposing those dates. We threw those out. It's up to you. We're proposing at 1 o'clock, and we're open to suggestions on how we do this. But these are the ways that we felt it would work good for staff. Because of the topics that are proposed, we're proposing that it be a joint meeting with the Planning and Parks and Recreation Commissions, because there's some issues that affect both of them also. And it has been a while since we've had a joint meeting with them. It would be good to have one anyway. So we would probably set up in the Louis Newman building for that.
Okay.
Do we want to do this with the current council, or do we want to wait until the new council is in?
Well, I was going to suggest that we're going to have some major changes in the makeup of the council in November, and we've got a workshop tentatively scheduled for to consider the fee study
Right.
in November, and perhaps we could combine them, do one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and have it on the November date. Is there any need to have it earlier? I mean,
Well,
October?
I guess not necessarily. There may be some park issues, as you know. At the last meeting, you recall the issue with the park in the Walnut Creek Estates, Mr. Tatro's property. I would hope that we can get out of that there are possibly ways to develop that rather than leave it as was proposed, that we, if we cannot, that we allow the trees to be left there. And so that's one of the issues that I hope to be able to flesh out and be able to show some of these costs at that meeting. But not necessarily. It kind of depends on how fast they move also. I'm not sure how fast that developer wants to move on that project. So we can move it back into November if you would prefer. That's fine with me.
How do council members feel about it?
And one of the, and one of the things that we would hopefully make sure, if depending on when they certify the new election, and last go around it wasn't until December that it was certified. But one of the things that I would hope that if this current council is involved in this workshop, then I would hope that we specifically, and I know Mr. Fantasia is here tonight. He's been here regularly at these council meetings. But I would hope that we would specifically send something out to our candidates for council, because, I mean, this is something that the new council is going to have to, we're just going to get the preliminary stuff. The new council is going to be the ones that says, this is where the parks are going to be, this is how much we're going to pay for them, this is everything. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that...
Sure. I've sent a letter to all of the council candidates, and then they all do receive a copy of your agenda packets during this time until the election. So we've tried. I've invited them to come in and visit with me anytime they want to, and they definitely would be invited to this meeting whenever we end up doing it.
Okay.
So yeah,
I just want to make sure, because
sure.
we're going to begin the process. I'd like to have everybody up to speed.
I guess there's really not going to be anything decided at this meeting anyway. It's just going to be going out.
Public input.
Right.
So,
I think it's important, though, when we're beginning a brand new process on something, that it's important that people are right there from step one to know what the actual steps were that the city took to get there. But okay.
so we still haven't decided on a date.
I would suggest that
21st,
if you want it to
What's that
be
date?
with,
You want to what? You want to
He
be on the
won't.
20th?
I said I won't be.
Oh,
on
I'm
the
sorry.
21st.
if you want it to be with the new council, I would recommend that we look at the first part of December, just to make sure that the election is certified and the new council is seated. Probably ought to be after our first meeting in December. Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you, I mean, we talked about having a workshop to talk about these fee studies in November. Is there a way to combine those two? I mean, we've had all-day workshops on a Saturday before.
Right.
Did one in the morning and one in the afternoon.
I mean, if there's some way we could combine them, because I know I'm probably like everybody else here. We like our weekends, and we don't want to, we don't want to have one Saturday and then come back a couple weeks later and, waste another, well, I don't want to say waste a Saturday, but, occupy another Saturday. We'd like to just maybe kill two birds with one stone if we possibly could, because we know everybody likes their weekends.
And the public as well. They would probably prefer to come to one rather than two Saturdays.
Right. Because the thing is, like Sheila says, you can maybe get people to one meeting, but you keep telling them to come back and, 20 people at the first one and 2 people at the next one.
This meeting that's proposed in here is actually proposed on a Thursday, so it's proposed as a Thursday evening meeting. But I mean, we can arrange our schedules, whatever the council.
That would be good.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
the
it
thing
is. I
that gets
think it's
people
meant.
to meetings is the fact that whatever the issue is, and if it's an important issue to them, as we well know, when there's been something important come up, they come out.
Right.
So I just think that's the way it's presented. These things are all important to everyone that lives in Newman, but maybe sometimes we take them too casual.
Right.
And we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we may not get a good turnout, but these meetings are very important.
So do we want to have it on the 28th, or do we want to wait till November? Oh, wait, did you say the 28th was on Thursday?
No, the
Oh.
28th. These dates that I've given you are Saturdays. I'm not sure when we will hold this meeting proposed for the fee study, because I believe that the date that they proposed is Thanksgiving.
It is Thanksgiving Day,
I don't
yeah.
think we'll get a very good
No.
turnout that day.
I don't think we'll have a quorum.
So,
The first Saturday in December is the 2nd. If
that might be a
Yeah,
good
wait
date.
till then.
You know the numbers, at least you can get the new.
That is the tree lighting ceremony, which is going to be during the day.
When is it?
Excuse me. Yeah,
When is it? Dave?
it's
The second.
December 2nd,
December 2nd.
and also the Miss Stanislaw pageant will be that night, so.
well, we'll
Kind of
have
a
a lot of
busy
people
day.
in town.
Yeah, we will.
Why can't we just have it on a regularly scheduled meeting then? I mean, or an extra Tuesday.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Rather than on a Saturday, you'd prefer
Yeah.
doing it.
I would agree.
That's fine with me. It'll probably make my staff very happy. I think they would
Yeah.
prefer it that way too. But
Why don't we do
Whatever.
that then? We'll just have another regularly scheduled Tuesday, and then we'll just have it then. We'll have those items. It's going to be noticed anyway, and we're going to invite the public and everything else, and then we'll have it then. That way, we don't.
are you saying a regular meeting or an
Or
extra meeting?
An extra, whatever. I mean,
I
whatever.
think it should be a special.
I think it ought to be a
meeting.
special
That's
meeting
fine.
to
To
be
devote it to
held
those items.
Where?
I would like to see it held other than here, because I think it creates a more relaxed atmosphere where people are more likely to sit around the table and speak openly and get
So we're
their-
going to have the Recreation Commission also, so.
Yeah, so it wouldn't fit here.
Yeah.
What if we looked at December 5th, the first Tuesday in December?
Fine with me. That may be the new council anyway, so that's fine with me.
Okay, we'll set it up tentatively for that date then, December 5th.
Okay, December 5th, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Where are we going to have it?
Probably do it at the Louis
Oh, okay.
Newman
Louis
Memorial
Newman.
Building. I'll have to check that date, make sure that Judy, we make sure we get that date penciled in the schedule.
Okay.
Okay?
Anything else?
The only thing would be these 2 items that we proposed. Is that acceptable? Are there any other items that the council wanted to look at?
I think that's enough to take up a meeting.
It probably is, yeah, for an evening meeting like that.
Right.
Okay?
All right. Items from the city manager, Cleve, anything tonight?
I don't believe so. We did receive letters from the Attorney General's office copies of letters to Tatarik. They have asked them to cease use of the spray bars or aerators because of the problems that was causing. And I think we're going to continue to make progress to get that situation cleaned up. I'm not sure what the outcome is going to be. They're going to be in some negotiations with Tatarik to see what we can resolve at this point. I believe that's the only item that I have.
Okay. Thank you, Cleve. Councilmember Martina, anything tonight?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Radford, anything?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Councilmember Reed?
Nothing this evening.
Nothing. Quick couple things. At the next meeting on the
yeah.
skate park, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking
No, go
about
ahead.
that. There'll be a chamber mixer tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at Why Not Floral. Members $3, non-members $5. Food, drink, fun. Come over.
Okay.
He just reminded me, and I'll remind him too, we probably ought to mention that on October 26th, we will be hosting the Central Valley Division League dinner here in Newman at the theater. That's the general membership dinner for the Central Valley League, so if you can mark that on your calendar, and we'll be hosting that event. So, okay. Anything else? No. I was just on the skate park, Cleve. Well, I know I talked to you earlier a little bit about it. We're going to have something back, you think? Yeah, I'm going to try to get that back to your next meeting. It's just what I'm finding is there's not a lot of consultants left out there that they've got to be somewhere, but that are interested in doing. Ours is a very small project, and I'm having a tough time finding somebody that's interested in looking at it. What I have done is secured a set of plans for another skate park, actually the one that just went in Manteca. They had actually gotten those plans from a city in Nevada who had put it in, done their own plans, and so they're public. They don't mind us using them. I was able to get those, and so I'm going to talk to our new city engineer about how we might be able to go about putting something together, and maybe we don't have to go out and get a private consultant to do that. So,
and there was one of the businesses expressed some interest in with the concrete as well. With regard,
we have one of the concrete companies locally here that has said that their drivers have offered to donate their time, which cuts about $20 a yard off the cost of the concrete. So it'll be a big boost and help us out. And I confirmed that with that gentleman today. I was talking to him, and he said, yeah, they're willing to do that. So.
Thank you, Cleve. On our purchase of I know we had talked about the police vehicle purchases tonight. Where are we at on our fire department vehicle on their the truck that they were?
I believe it's been ordered. Is that correct, Margaret, or has it been received? It's close.
I think it's in town.
Is it in town?
Is it in town already?
Yeah.
And now, were we gonna? Was that including all the equipment and everything else? Or were we gonna budget that as well?
We've got to talk to him about that, but yeah, we'll work that out.
And will that come back to us to authorize payment?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Let me see. I don't have anything else tonight. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.